In response to my previous video, a couple of fanboys of Qaiser Raja went and said that I should call into his live stream and offer debating him there or bring up my points there. Now, I've already said this in the comments, but I'm going to say it again. I'm not going to do that because it's a space that's controlled by him and any co-moderator or co-host rather that he has. But if he wants to debate me in a neutral third space where it is structured and we have a moderator who isn't like one of his people, I'm still happy to do that. I gotta say though, this guy is not actually as influential or important as I thought, or maybe as he used to be. And the reason I say this is because I did not know about the existence of these live streams until those two guys and my comments mentioned it. And when I went to actually see a live stream, meaning to see a recorded live stream, then what I saw was that his YouTube videos have not that many views at all. If you compare that to say engineer Muhammad Ali Mirza, who's another one of these religious content creator people with whom Qaiser Raja has done a padda for some reason. I'm glad he has, because I suspect that it's that padda that has actually reduced his popularity. It seems to me that he's become less popular. I'm not 100% sure, but in any case, his popularity is less than that of engineer Muhammad Ali Mirza. I mean, Muhammad Ali Mirza will have like, I don't know, 4 million views in one of his YouTube videos, and Qaiser Raja will have like 15,000 views or something like that. So this has also reduced my enthusiasm for debating him, because he doesn't seem to be someone who's all that influential in Pakistan. But nevertheless, if he wants to debate me, the offer is still up, provided that it's in a neutral third space with a moderator who isn't one of his people and not one of my people either, obviously, and that is structured. This is the last video that I'm going to do replying to Qaiser Raja. He's not important enough for me to make this a long series, and also I really do not like his content, and it's really painful for me to have to actually watch this guy's videos. After this, I'm going to address some of the other right-wingers, some of the other burger Taliban people, and then I'm done with this series.
And they are very intelligent people. इसलिए वो आप को निशाना बनाते हैं.
Now, this is a very popular talking point, or a very popular style of propaganda rather, that I've seen in the right wing in Pakistan, which is to try to make it seem as if there's a sinister conspiracy and plot by people on the left. People often say exposing the agenda, exposed, and a lot of the time there just is no agenda. So we are openly saying that we believe certain things. Just because you don't agree with us doesn't mean what we're doing is something hidden or an agenda or a conspiracy. It's not like we're going and trying to corrupt the youth by being like, we're going to catch these people when they're young and convert them to our weird cult. Like, no. I mean, I don't know exactly what he's referring to. I assume he's referring to the presence within educational settings of some sort of scientifically correct and progressive view when it comes to gender and so on. And that's a good thing, because that's part of education. It's almost non-existent in Pakistan, actually. Just making up a situation in order to whip up a moral panic. And how is it okay for him to go and try to influence young people, but not okay for us to try to influence young people? This is the typical kind of question-begging approach taken by these right-wingers.
अगर कोई मर्द अपने आप को औरत कहता है तो भाई वो उसकी लाइफ है ना, आपको क्या तकलीफ है? तो हम भी कहते हैं जी उसकी लाइफ है, हमें कोई तकलीफ नहीं है, अपनी प्राइवेट स्पेस में करे. हमें प्रॉब्लम ये है कि जब वो खुद को औरत डिक्लेयर करेगा तो फिर औरतों की टॉयलेट्स में भी जाएगा. हमारी माएं, हमारी बहनें, हमारी बेटियां, उनके टॉयलेट्स भी शेयर करेगा उनके साथ, उनकी स्पोर्टिंग एक्टिविटीज भी शेयर करेगा, उनके चेंजिंग रूम्स में भी जाएगा. पॉलिटिकली औरतों के साथ नाइंसाफी है इसलिए कि वो औरतों के लिए जो मखसूस नशिस्तें होती हैं असेंबली में, स्पेशल डेजिग्नेटेड सीट्स होती हैं, वो उन पे इलेक्शन भी कंटेस्ट करेंगे.
This is a tired old talking point that I've heard from Western transphobic people as well. Most likely it's chapad from the Western right wing. The idea is that it's okay for a man to declare himself a woman, but he can't force other people to consider him a woman. Well, first of all, trans women are not men and trans men are not women. And you have not given a single argument to defend the claim that trans women are actually men and trans men are actually women. So far, I've not heard a single good argument by any transphobe, not just in Pakistan, not just Qaiser Raja, by any transphobe anywhere in the world in support of the claim that trans women are actually men and trans men are actually women. We've given arguments on our side. I've done that in videos I've made on YouTube, for example, as well as in the blog post linked in the description. And it's not going to work to just redefine gender as sex and say, well, this person is a man. Look, he has the penis and testicles. Penis, testicle, therefore man. I am genius. The women-only spaces and women's bathroom point is a Western transphobic and TERF talking point that has already been rebutted a million times. I'm not going to go over all of that again. Very briefly, it actually doesn't harm anyone for trans women to use women's bathrooms. They look like women. It's not safe for them to use men's bathrooms. And in the context of Pakistan, the demand of the Khawaja sera community is not to have access to women's spaces. They have explicitly stated, we do not want access to women's spaces. We want our own separate spaces. The problem is when you violate trans people's rights. It's not you not believing that trans women are women or trans men are men. You can believe whatever you want. You can believe that butterflies are the moon. Who cares? You can believe that the earth is flat. You can not believe in evolution, something you already do. It's a pseudoscientific belief. It's not a plausible belief. It's contrary to common sense, but you have the right to it. But when you do things like prevent trans people from being able to change their legal gender, then you are actually forcing your beliefs on them. So for example, if you were to prevent a trans man from changing his legal gender from female to male on his ID card, passport, driver's license, and so on, then what you are doing is you're forcing your belief that he is not really a man on him. But the trans rights movement is not imposing any belief on anybody else. It's simply asserting equal rights and equal humanity. As far as cis people pretending to be trans is concerned, why would they do that? For the sake of being able to contest an election on a reserved seat, really? A cis man would change his legal gender to female, which will create so many problems for him in life. When he goes to create a bank account, people aren't even going to believe that it's his ID card. Ask any trans man the difficulties that they have to go through because of the fact they have a female gender marker on their ID card. They can't get basic things done because people think they've stolen somebody else's ID card because they look like men. A cis man who looks like a man and lives as a man and has the privileges of a man, first of all, he wouldn't feel the need to change his legal gender because the access to a quota or a reserved seat is less than the privilege he has as a male politician. But in any case, if he's stupid enough to do this in the first place, then he's going to have to face the fallout of this in the rest of his life. His marriage to his wife, for example, if he's married, is going to be under threat. All sorts of other rights, his inheritance rights are going to be under threat. Men receive more inheritance than women in Pakistan. He's going to put himself in so much difficulty when it comes to applying for jobs, when it comes to applying for a bank account, when it comes to all sorts of other things in life. He gets stopped at a police checkpoint and he has to give his ID card and it says female and he looks like a man. He's going to do all of this for the sake of contesting a fucking reserved seat. Are you insane? What kind of a person would even do that? It's not even a guarantee that he will get that position. It's just the possibility of contesting it. He might still lose the election. In the case of female to male or in the case of trans men, you might try to argue that, well, they're doing this for the sake of getting more inheritance or increasing their rights or their social standing. And that would be marginally more plausible, less crazy compared to the idea that a cis man would destroy all his privilege and essentially his entire life just for the sake of contesting a reserved seat or accessing a women's bathroom. What would even be the point of accessing a women's bathroom? What's so special in bathrooms? So he wants to hear or see people doing pishy potty? I mean, people are in separate stalls anyway. They're not doing pishy potty in front of each other. So what is he going to do? Start peering over into the stalls? That's already illegal. Women aren't allowed to do that to other women. There's already law enforcement mechanisms in place. The law applies to bathrooms just as much as it applies to anywhere else. Going back to the case of trans men. Now, trans men do not, in fact, transition socially or medically for the sake of getting social privileges. One evidence of this is the fact that cis women have not all transitioned. The vast majority of people who are assigned female at birth are cis. In other words, they are women. So why haven't they transitioned if the only thing people are interested in is gaining privileges, even if it means lying about your identity? Because people don't want to lie about their identity. They want to live according to their identity. A cis woman is not going to feel comfortable living as a man because she doesn't see herself as a man. In any case, there should be no difference in how men and women are treated according to the law, in the sense that there should be equality, equal rights. Not to mention that even though trans men can benefit from male privilege to a certain extent after they transition, they still have the disadvantaged position of being trans. They still face persecution or oppression as trans people, which means that while some of the misogyny that was directed toward them when they were living as women will no longer be directed toward them once they transition, but there will still be other things directed toward them that wouldn't affect them if people did not know that they were trans, namely transphobia. And some misogyny is still directed toward trans men in the instance that people know that this individual is a trans man. So transitioning does not in fact give you privileges and rights that you did not otherwise have. The reason trans people transition is because not transitioning is not a life worth living. If you have a male gender identity and you live as a woman, that is not compatible with your basic psychological survival.
ये क्या पेश करते हैं आपके सामने? मर्द, औरत और ख्वाजा सरा. आप क्लियर होने चाहिए कि मर्द, औरत और बस. That's it. There is nothing else. ख्वाजा सरा एक मर्द होता है. इनफैक्ट बाय डेफिनेशन ख्वाजा सरा होने के लिए उसका मर्द होना जरूरी है कि वो एक ऐसा मर्द होता है जो रिप्रोड्यूस नहीं कर सकता.
This is just blatantly and widely known to be false. Infertile men are not all Khwaja Sara. In fact, Khwaja Sara generally as a group are not men. There might be some cis men within the category of Khwaja Sara. Most of them are trans, and some are intersex. As I've explained elsewhere, intersex is not a separate gender. There are some intersex people within the Khwaja Sara community. There are also cis people who are intersex. But cis people who are infertile, whether they are intersex or not, are not automatically Khwaja Sara. A cis man whose testes just don't produce sperm is not Khwaja Sara. In fact, there are fertile Khwaja Sara people. Khwaja Sara people are not even all infertile. How does he not know even the most basic stuff? And he has the audacity to go and give a lecture about it. This guy has no auqat, and yet he's treated like he's some kind of intellectual.
लेकिन उसका क्रोमोसोम उसे चेंज नहीं हुआ.
ज़ाहिर है chromosomes तो नहीं बदलने वाले. Your chromosomes don't change once you're born. But so what? No one's claiming that they do. If the idea is that your gender is determined by your chromosomes, please present an argument to defend that, because you haven't at any point. Not only has Qaiser Raja not defended this claim, but also there are considerations against it. For example, there are cis men with XX chromosomes. There are also cis women with XY chromosomes. Let's consider cis men with XX chromosomes. There's a condition called 46XX male syndrome, where people are born phenotypically male. In some cases, they have ambiguous genitalia, ambiguous male genitalia that is, but in most cases, they have unambiguous male genitalia, but they have XX chromosomes. They have no female reproductive organs or any female phenotypic characteristic. Now, are these individuals also women?
The gametes जो responsible हैं उसकी सेक्स, उसकी जिन्स की डिटर्मिनेशन के लिए, वो चेंज नहीं होंगे इसकी वजह से.
Now he's just gone from the chromosome criterion of gender, which he implicitly endorsed, to the gamete criterion of gender, which he's explicitly endorsing. Is it a person's chromosomes that determine their gender, or is it their gametes? Because these are two separate things completely.
Chromosomes कहाँ पे होते हैं? Gametes में.
Chromosomes don't only exist inside gametes, they also exist in somatic cells. As a matter of fact, gametes have half the chromosomes of somatic cells, but regardless, why is he mentioning specifically the chromosomes inside gametes? I think this guy just doesn't know what chromosomes and gametes are. I think he's just heard two different transphobic propaganda points and conflated them.
और gametes कितने होते हैं? 2.
His argument for why there are only two genders is that there are only two types of gametes. That's a terrible argument. While it is true there are only two types of gametes, there's clearly an implicit premise there, which is that the number of genders is determined by the number of gametes. He has given zero arguments to defend that assumption.
ये जो बात मैंने आपसे की है, ये मैंने इनके जो सबसे इनके जो चीफ साइंटिस्ट है ना इस वक्त.
इनके chief scientist? What is this guy on about? First of all, who is in? Is he referring to progressive people, people on the left, trans people? Does he really think that there's a chief scientist of an entire group of people like this? Does this guy live on planet Earth? What's the matter with him?
उसके बाद है मुखन्नस. मुखन्नस भी एक मर्द होता है, लेकिन उसकी शबाहत औरतों जैसी होती है. अब वो भले उसने लाइफस्टाइल के तौर पे की हो या एक मेडिकल कंडीशन है, मेंटल कंडीशन है, जिसे कहा जाता है जेंडर डिस्फोरिया. और जेंडर डिस्फोरिया भी कोई ऐसी इनक्योरेबल चीज नहीं है. इनफैक्ट स्टडी हमें यह बताती है कि समवेयर बिटवीन 60 to 94% ऑफ द पेशेंट्स ऑफ जेंडर डिस्फोरिया वो अपनी असल जेंडर की तरफ चले जाते हैं बाय द टाइम दे रीच puberty.
Want to cite the study? Because none of the research I've looked at says that, and I think it's pretty interesting that you have given zero citations to back up your outrageous claim. In the description, I've linked to just a sample of research that shows that gender-affirming healthcare is in fact very beneficial for trans people, that transitioning socially and medically increases well-being of trans people significantly, and that very few people actually regret it.
कैसी औरत जो मर्दों की शबाहत इख्तियार करे. यहां पे एक मिनट के लिए रुक के सोचिए, एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात है यहां पे. Why do you think कि पाकिस्तान में आपको मुतरजिला ना होने के बराबर नजर आती है? इनफैक्ट मुझे कभी भी नजर नहीं आई.
I could make fun of this. I could just leave this here because he just made an absolute twat of himself. But I'm not going to, because I made a resolution which I have admirably kept. And that is that I'm not going to mock, I'm not going to insult, I'm just going to stick to the arguments and give the rebuttals. But I just want you to note the fact that this guy just said he has never even seen a trans man. This is your problem that you think you have never even seen a trans man. Do you really think that trans men don't exist? Trans women generally are more visible than trans men because trans men tend to pass more easily than trans women. But also in Pakistan, the visibility of trans women is increased by the fact that you have this historic khwaja sera community.
उसके कई रीजंस हैं. ये स्पोर्टिंग एक्टिविटीज में जाते हैं तो वो जो पहले 500 जो टॉप के एथलीट्स हैं, स्विमर्स हैं, उनमें जिनका नाम नहीं आता, जब वो मर्दों के साथ मुकाबले करते हैं, एक दिन खुद को और डिक्लेयर करो और जाओ उनके साथ और वो रिकॉर्ड पे रिकॉर्ड तोड़ते आते हैं.
Now he's just speculated an extremely transphobic and trans-misogynist theory that trans women exist because there is a group of men that simply want to defeat cis women in sports, so they become trans women in order to do so. Trans women are more underrepresented in professional sports than cis women are. The vast majority of trans women don't even participate in professional sports, let alone in women's sports. That alone refutes this absurd theory. There's also zero evidence to back it up. No serious psychologist or psychiatrist would say that the reason that trans people exist or that the reason that trans women exist specifically is because they want to defeat cis women in women's sports. Those trans women who have participated in women's sports have generally lost. There are also trans men that have won against cis men, and there are trans men who participate in men's sports and they want to do so. I mean, just imagine that you don't identify as a woman. Are you willing to go through the process of transitioning socially, let alone medically, and living as a woman for the rest of your life with all the consequences that come with that, just for the sake of potentially winning against cis women in women's sports? A lot of sporting bodies have even banned trans women from competing in the women's category, and yet that has not resulted in trans women ceasing to exist, or trans women reducing in number even. And why do khwaja sera people exist who explicitly say that they don't want to use women's spaces, they want to have their own separate third spaces? And why do other non-binary trans people exist? And why do trans men exist?
Well, khunsa एक ऐसा बच्चा जो पैदाइशी तौर पे मुकम्मल मर्द है या मुकम्मल औरत है, लेकिन उनके reproductive organs में इबहाम है.
That's not even an internally consistent description.
जो internal उनके reproductive organs हैं वो external से मैच नहीं करते, या उनमें दोनों ही है, मेल और फीमेल दोनों ही उनमें निशानियां पाई जाती हों.
That's not the case with all intersex conditions. There are intersex conditions where a person is phenotypically completely male or completely female, but there's a difference in chromosomes or in genetics. There's also conditions in which you have missing elements, like a reproductive organ that is simply absent,
which has nothing to do with their sex or jins.
Are you hearing the words that are coming out of your mouth? You just said they are born with different sex characteristics from what is typical of male or female, but that has nothing to do with their sex. What do you think sex is?
अगर कहीं कोई ऐसी बात हो जाती है कि खुंसा बच्चा पैदा होता है, which is an extreme rarity, लेकिन अगर हो भी जाती है तो उसका इलाज मुमकिन है, भाई इलाज हो जाता है, बात खत्म हो गई.
There is no cure for intersex conditions. You are born intersex and that does not cease to exist. The genital surgeries that are performed on intersex babies are not done in order to cure them of anything. They are done even in conditions where the baby actually does not need surgery. It is to bring their genitalia in line with a more typical male or typical female form. In some instances, there is a genuine medical need for a surgery or whatever, but that's not a cure for the condition. That's a way to improve the health of the individual.
यही वजह है कि हम जिन्स परस्तों के इवेंट्स पाकिस्तानी यूनिवर्सिटीज में होना शुरू हो गए.
While I fully support hum jins paraston ke mele etc., I'm pro LGB and pro trans obviously. Nevertheless, trans rights and acknowledging that trans people exist and having basic scientifically correct and commonsensically plausible views is not the reason why these events exist. The reason these events exist is because gay people exist, and gay people do want to have social activities with other gay people. They do want to affirm their identity. They do want to enjoy the experience of being gay, and they have every right to do that. But that's not the same thing as trans rights. While we are part of the same LGBT community in the sense that trans people and gay people do have associations with one another, and there are of course trans people who do identify as bisexual, for example, or as gay men, or as lesbians, or as just queer. In fact, trans people generally do consider themselves queer. Nevertheless, these two things are not the same, and if you want to argue against that, which you shouldn't, because you shouldn't persecute any minority, but if you want to do so, then go ahead and do so, but don't conflate that with trans issues.
ट्रांस एज पता है आपको क्या चीज होती है? मैं हूं 60 साल का लेकिन मैं फील 5 साल वाले बच्चा.
Name one person in Pakistan who's trans age.
या कल कोई आदमी किसी औरत से कहे कि मैं फील कर रहा हूं मैं तुम्हारा हस्बैंड हूं, कहो.
I don't believe I'm actually responding to this idiocy, but to claim that you are somebody's husband who has not consented to marry you would just be false, and you can't make a law forcing people to marry you because that would be a violation of consent. But a trans person existing and transitioning and having their identity legally recognized does not violate anybody else's consent. Marriage is a relationship. Gender isn't.
इनमें एक बड़ी पर्टिकुलर जेंडर होती है, वो सबसे क्यूट होती है, उसे कहते हैं मून जेंडर.
What? What the fuck is moon gender?
अगर वो चाह रहे हैं कि नहीं हमने ना मेल में जाना है ना फीमेल में जाना है, हम इंटरसेक्स के तौर पे ही जीना चाह रहे हैं.
Now this is an interesting question because the questioner says हम intersex के तौर पे ही जीना चाह रहे हैं. Now by saying हम जीना चाह रहे हैं इस तौर पर, like मर्द के तौर पर, औरत के तौर पर, intersex के तौर पर, he's already acknowledging gender as a social phenomenon. Now he's not framing it using the term gender or using the term social role, but he's acknowledging that there is a social aspect to this whole thing, which everybody already knows as a matter of common sense, but he's explicitly acknowledging, relatively explicitly acknowledging it anyway. The mistake is the fact that he thinks intersex is a social role. Intersex के तौर पर कोई नहीं जीता, क्योंकि लोग सिर्फ उस तौर पर जी सकते हैं जो एक social role है. मर्द के तौर पर जी सकते हैं, औरत के तौर पर जी सकते हैं, ख्वाजा सरा के तौर पर जी सकते हैं, कोई और नॉन बाइनरी आइडेंटिटी के तौर पर जी सकते हैं, क्योंकि ये सोशल कैटेगरीज है. जब हम तौर पे जीने के बारे में बात करते हैं तो हम एक सोशल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बात कर रहे हैं. लेकिन इंटरसेक्स सिर्फ एक बायोलॉजिकल कंडीशन है. एक इंटरसेक्स इंसान मर्द भी हो सकता है, औरत भी हो सकता है, वो सिस भी हो सकता है, वो ट्रांस भी हो सकता है. Now Qaiser Raja's response was absolute horseshit, obviously, unsurprisingly. He went and said, नहीं ये पॉसिबल ही नहीं है. ये इसको इनका इलाज करा दे, साइंस यहाँ तक पहुँच गया है. I already explained there's no cure for intersex conditions because it's not a disease. You're just born intersex and that's it. But it doesn't matter because intersex people don't live in a separate segment of society. If they were living separately with a separate social role, then that would be gender. That would be a distinct gender. But that's not the reality. There are intersex people who do live as a gender other than man or woman, and there are also intersex people who don't live that way. And there are also non-intersex people who live as some gender other than man or woman.